And welcome back to the hottest marriage show in the world. It is I, John D, and
The do.
on Doing Too Much.
I'm really Kanika. I don't go by do except for by this guy. I just need y'all to know.
Yeah, same. But she goes by K in the neighborhood.
I ain't even gonna talk about that. That's for later.
But how are you doing right now?
I'm a little hyped because I'm a little hyped. There we go. Okay. So I'm doing this training, and there was a comment or a definition made, and having a conversation with John about the definition. It's funny because when I say things to you, I'm always, and I don't know why I feel this way because it never works out. I always feel like you're going to say, yeah, I understand exactly what you mean. But you always come back and you're like, I feel like that might not be what that means. Or maybe it's always looking at it in a different way. And I'll be like, John, it is. It's kind of like I be thinking, call a spade, but you be like, nah.
Because I think when you describe something, you take it the most negative way possible. And I'm like, maybe it shouldn't be looked at that way because your energy changes. Like, if you believe it's true, it'll just change your whole day.
Okay, so I'm gonna start y'all off with what it was I said. So in this training, it's talk about Dr. Kamara Phyllis Jones. She's a doctor. She's a medical and PhD in public health. She talks a lot about health and she talks about racial disparities, things of that nature. And so she defined racism as a system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on the social interpretation of how one looks, which is your race, that unfairly disadvantages some individuals and communities, unfairly advantages other individuals and communities. And this last part is where I was like, I really like that she said that, and saps the strength of the whole society through the waste of human resources. And I said, it's so true. Everyone talks about how great America is. But in my head, I'm like, okay, we all know that there are some people who have great health insurance and they may never use it. And we got other people who have really, really poor health and they really need those resources and that access and they don't get it. And if we all were adequately provided for in regards to our health and our basic needs, we all could operate optimally and our society as a whole would be much stronger and better. But we are wasting our resources by bombing these resources on one group and unfairly advantaging them and starving out other groups. And I feel like historically, Black people, I feel like historically, we have made it a badge of honor that we have been able to succeed and have these amazing outcomes for ourselves, despite the fact that we are starved of resources. You'd be like, this person came out the hood and look how great they are. Yeah, I didn't even have this and look how, and I'm not going to take anything from them because it's the truth.
Watch this though.
Wait, it's the truth. We are able to really make $1 out of 15 cents, and that's not a lie. And we are amazing for it. We're superheroes for that. I'm not going to lie about that. But it doesn't mean it. Imagine how awesome we could be if we were adequately provided for.
I got the challenge right now.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Tell me if you wouldn't want to be a part of this United States. Now, what did I tell you about racism? I told you that they split it up in different parts. And I said capitalism was one of them. So you got everybody that's chasing $1. How about if we say, if you want racism, we split the United States up. Everybody who wants to stay in the socialism or the communism aspect where we keep all the people who want to help people do better, the money stays in. Who wants to be on the racist side of the country? How many people that brings the money?
Yeah, but then that goes into where we got to at the end of this conversation about doing one step at a time.
Yeah, no, I know, but I was just saying, who wants to be on the racist side of the country? Like, if we decided to say, hey, we do want everybody to have health care, and we have these people that make all of this money that say, I'm willing to contribute so that this country can have it. But since we have this constitutional laws that won't allow us to do these things because people want to stick to traditional values from 1700s. But my point is, if the racist side of the country, who would actually benefit, that makes money would support that side? Because if you knew that a company was racist, wouldn't you stop supporting it?
Not if you yourself are racist.
But my point is, would you want people to know that? Because if you're doing
are you saying that we split the world? If we were to split the country up, we wouldn't say this is the racist side and this is the socialist. Oh, no. You'd say the capitalist side, and capitalism has been lauded as this amazing, wonderful thing that America has. So yeah, they would be proud to be on this capitalist side until they're like, and I can't even say when they the down and dirty poor people and there's still rich people, and the gap is even more apparent. You know, if I were on the capitalist side and I'm the one, I feel like the idea of the people that are in the middle and who are adequately supported in the middle, I feel like they give this false perception that there's this spectrum in the United States that's okay. They're going to be rich and they're going to be poor, and some people just know that they're poor and then that's it. But if they were to be able to see another side in which people were adequate, and I'm not saying that everybody is driving around in a Lamborghini or a Panamera. I'm saying that everyone has food. They don't have to worry about their food. They don't have to worry about their housing. They don't have to worry about having adequate transportation to get to where they need to go, or health care. If they were able to see it, I don't know if they have so much poor education. And I'm not saying quality of education, poor education. I'm saying how you've been educated about people. I don't know if you have been bombed with so many poor bits of information about people that you still wouldn't be able to see. Like, you know, we're taught that communism and socialism are bad. But I think that the people who are enacting it and how they put it out there, they're the ones that poison the idea. The idea of it itself is not bad.
It's not at all.
And so I think that you're still going to have some people who are brainwashed. But I think in that capitalist side, there's always going to be a bottom, and it's going to be a few at the top. And it will be even more apparent once you move that middle out of the way, and the people at the bottom be looking around like, why are we scraping and scrounging?
I think people think when they think of communism or socialism, they think of Eastern Europe and China. Yeah. They was like, oh, it's got to look like that. We're Americans. We can make it look however we want.
Make it look however you want. But so when we were talking, I was just saying, you know, however we might have ended up talking about making changes and how everyone needs to be taken care of easily, and or not easily, but fairly. And somehow the conversation, because I was like, you know, we got going, and John was like, who's gonna know to do all this stuff? I said, take the mics out.
She did.
Because I feel like there's somebody that might hear it and be like, oh yeah, I can do this. Because, you know, it really can just take one person. It could take a match and, you know, light a flame. But anyway, so we were talking, and it got around to, I was talking about doctors. And I said, you know, doctors have learned all the way from 1832. There was a guy called the father of gynecology, J. Marion Sims. And he was a slave owner, or he enslaved people. That's the proper way of saying it. He enslaved people. And the women that he enslaved, he used them to advance his practice in gynecology. He used black women with no anesthesia because he believed that black women did not experience pain the same as other people, or black people as a whole didn't experience pain the same as others. And so he would use it without anesthesia. He created all these new tools and techniques in gynecology. And even to this day, we learned not recently, but in those a few years ago, when Serena had her child, and she was saying, you know, there was pain in her chest and the doctors weren't listening. It ended up that she had an embolism, I believe a pulmonary embolism. But whatever it was, they weren't listening. And we have a lot of issues in which Black women, infant mortality and maternal mortality are higher for Black women because there are perceptions that doctors have been taught all the way from 200 years ago about believing our tolerance of pain. When we say we're in pain, like even in this training, it was talking about breast cancer survivors. And they say, you really have to learn how to advocate for yourself and be persistent, because doctors will ignore you. When you say I'm in pain, they don't understand that just because I'm saying to you I'm in pain and I'm not crying or I'm not wailing on the floor, it doesn't mean that this pain doesn't hurt a lot. But I've also learned that when I cry or I have I'm wailing around with pain, y'all still don't care. So what's the point of doing all that? I just need to be able to let you know that I need help. So, I think that Black women, this part we didn't talk about, but I do think that Black women have learned that our tears aren't going to give us what we need, because people don't be caring about that. And that brings me up to another woman. I'd like for you to link this video with this podcast. It was this Black woman explaining to these white women on their podcast about how, white women's tears are different and how we can't care about that because our tears don't nobody be caring about that stuff. But bringing it back around, we're not listened to. There are ideas, there are archaic, like barbaric practices that took place.
Draconian.
Yes, that took place years and years ago that are still present to this day about how medical providers address Black women in their pain. And so I was saying, John was like, well, how are you supposed to, educate? What are you supposed to? Everybody should be educated at this point. After COVID-19, I feel like there was a whole big push about health equity, inclusion, diversity, all this other stuff, and disparities. And these are all these hot words. And at this point, we need to get to the point where, and even in law enforcement, we need to get to a point where we put away with these old ideas and we start really, really looking at, how would I do this if it were me or my family? So on the medical side, there have been studies where you would give a doctor two identical files, medical files, and one will be a Black person's name and one will be a white person's name, and they will automatically give different treatment options based on race. But if you give them a file and they don't identify the race or any part of the identity, the doctor automatically defaults to what is the best form of care I can provide.
That is the craziest.
And so, and it's the same thing with what we talk about, resumes. When they started doing resumes, they were taking names off. When we do our hiring practices at my job, we take anything that might identify whether or not the person is male, female, or their race or ethnicity. We take that off and we're only able to look at your qualifications.
That's nice.
And we take off anything that will indicate your age, how many years ago you got your degree, all of that stuff. So that when you're looking at it, you're looking only at their ability. Now, then you go back and you're like, okay, that allows me, it reminds me of another thing where it was like talking about in orchestras and how first chair instruments were often men. But what they started doing is they started having the people perform behind a curtain. So those who were deciding who would be first chair would not know if it was a man or a woman. But guess what? There was still a disparity. And what they realized is when men walked on the hardwood floor,
they could tell the difference.
They could tell whether or not it was high heels or if it was men's dress shoes. And what did they do? They made everybody walk onto the stage with no shoes on. So then you really didn't know who was playing. And then the disparity became less apparent. You started to see more equality in the choice of the first chair of these orchestras. And so what I'm saying is, if you will do better, if you don't know any of the things that we've been taught to be biased to, that's the society we're supposed to be in. That's taking it and it's stopping that that ability to give unfair disadvantages to some individuals and communities and unfair advantages to others, this is where you find the strength of the society. This is where you are able to
that would be
fully
dope.
find.
And
but we're not doing that.
I know, because that's new information. Like that's a new way to try. Like that's, come on. If that ain't like common I've never heard of that until just like now.
Yeah. But then we started talking about police and how they police. And so what was your statement about that?
I said that I understand why white cops may not shoot another white person. I think it's due to temperament. They're used to, they can tell when they may be more endangered. But as far as a black person,
their people.
Yes. I just think it's like you know how people act that you're around. And I said that because me being black, like I kind of grew up different. And I grew up around people that will put hands on you or not put hands on you. And I've been able to tell, with somebody that you don't know may put hands on you just because of how they move. And I think that when you don't know how those behaviors are, you get scared. And I think that's typically their behavior. But you brought up something to my, like more information that made me feel like, okay, but I still feel like you feel a little more comfortable. I feel comfortable around black people because I understand, you know what I'm saying? But
I'm gonna be honest and say I feel more comfortable around black people as well. However, with white people, it's interesting because I really truly fear white people who have American flags on their cars, not just flying the flag, but like stickers and stuff. That's a new thing that I have. But I don't fear them in their temperament, but I do feel like you gotta watch them. Yeah. But I feel like you gotta watch us too. But I feel like I'm more in tune with, okay, the temperature is changing when I'm looking at my people.
That American flag for you is our skin for them. Yeah.
So let me just give this example. So I was just saying to him, okay, what bothers me is you could have we've watched and we've all seen these videos where it's like a white dude that's getting a ticket and he's like cussing at the police officer. The police officer ain't saying nothing. Throw the ticket out the window. The police officer, his thing is, I still gave you the ticket, and move on about his business. You will have somebody else in a car and they will straight shoot you. Like you're in the car with your family. You explain that you have a weapon in the car, but you also have a license to conceal and carry. And it still won't matter. This is where I was going with that, is that, yes, they understand their temperament, but at the same time, you could see them apprehend somebody who is mass shooting and in a school shooting up everybody, but you can get them out of there alive, out of a church, I know, but out of a grocery store.
What did I ask you after
But
that?
listen, so my point was, they could look at you from the entire spectrum of being like, oh, I'm mad and I'm cussing, all the way down to I have an automatic rifle in my hand and I'm just spraying fools. And somehow they can get them out. But then I was talking about Elijah McClain. If you guys remember the young man, they said he was a really great violinist. He was a young man walking down the street, had headphones on, didn't really understand what they were saying. He smiled. They said, easy to smile. Everybody loved this dude. Somehow y'all end up spraying this dude. But these are all different police officers. But what I'm saying is all those doctors I'm talking about are different too. They're all being taught this background information about you need to be worried about these black people no matter what. You need to be prepared to protect yourself and save yourself. But you could also apprehend somebody who's spraying and killing people and still feel a sense of level-headedness to be able to apprehend that person versus someone that may not be following your instructions because they have headphones on. But here we are. Yeah. Sean Bell was pulling his phone out of his pocket in a alley in New York, and they sprayed him. Like, you cannot tell me that these people have not been taught that regardless of whatever, our lives are less valuable and we are far more dangerous, even in instances where we're smiling at you and waving our hands and saying we don't know what you're saying, moving your headphones, pulling your phone out, whatever the case may be, and you are automatically so afraid that you're going to kill us. Like, no. And so
I just feel like going forward, like now they're giving sentences to those who are,
one person.
Now they are giving sentences to those. And to me, I feel like if it continues, do you believe that they want to endanger their life? They want to be locked up to kill a black person or person of color?
No, but I feel like we were talking about when I said to you, this is one person. Out of all of these instances, one person was made an example.
No, that the young lady that went into the wrong apartment, she got sentenced.
Okay, so we got two.
The Louisville, the guy, whoever did get in trouble. Got? He got something. I think I believe it wasn't
donut?
what people wanted.
Oh, okay. So what I'm saying is we could sit here and talk about these isolated incidents in which justice was served.
No, but that's just
the
starting,
grotesque
though.
Percentage of those who aren't,
but it
we
has
have
to
be
start
mindful of.
I'm just saying it's starting.
I agree.
So it, like, I know it's not going to be overnight, but I just feel like if it continues, it'll increase.
Okay. Well, so then it leads to us talking about education across the board and how, we need to start dismantling how people are being taught. But it's hard to do that because you all feel like, how are we supposed to revamp the entire police department? How are we supposed to revamp the entire way that these medical providers are acting? So I was telling him, I was talking to a cousin recently and she was really upset. And she said, I'm just so overwhelmed. It's like, this is falling apart. This is falling apart. This is falling apart. And so I said, and she said, I just feel like I want to give up. And I said, look, all the stuff is going to fall apart if you sitting here crying about it falling apart. Choose whatever the priority is. Decide where you want to be in with this situation and what steps you need to take one by one to fix that. I said, if all 5 areas are falling apart, you doing better if you at least fix one of the 5. And then once that's solid, you move on to the next thing. So either we're going to let everything tumble down or we at least going to start fixing stuff one bit by bit. So I said, in the basic education system, math, do math, revamp math. You ain't got to revamp the entire educational system, but I could tell you right now that the educational system is set up for the industrial era and we are not there anymore. So fix math so then these people can, do their taxes so people can understand basic algebra because that's what you use every day. You don't need trigonometry. You don't need calculus.
You don't.
So why are we talking about that? Let's make sure everybody's silent. And then after you do that, and this could be interchangeable. I don't care which one you do. Social studies. Learning about people. This country is too diverse for you to be telling me about the Pony Express. I need to be learning about my children, and my children's children need to learn about who's in our country, who's outside of our country, because the United States is not the only country in the world. Who are we working with? What are their practices? How we can respect others? Like all of that stuff. Those 2 things are important to me. I feel like you know what we got Microsoft
culture.
Yeah, because Microsoft we got Grammarly, we got Microsoft where they correct our spelling. English, put that to the side. Science, always fun, but we'll roll with science. But social studies and math, I feel like we need to do something. So if you're telling me that after COVID-19, I see all of these health equity and diversity directors showing up in all of these different job positions and all of these different policies and practices being put into place, then everybody should be doing it. Who is the equity and diversity officer that's being put in each of these police departments? What they should have their whole training. Nurses, they told me before my license can be renewed, I need to have a health equity and diversity training. I have to have at least one or they won't even give me my license for the next 2 years. So I'm asking, why are they not required to have some type of equity and diversity training every year? Why are they not monitored? Why are you not y'all create positions for a million other things. You need to start doing that. Do one thing. I'm not telling you to pull every cop off the street. I'm telling you, the people who have the most, you could give everybody training, and then the people who have the most complaints, then you give them, like, put them on a what is it called? A PIP, a PIP. That's what my friend always says. It's a performance improvement plan.
Yeah.
So then for 90 days, you're watching their numbers. After 90 days, you do another 90 days, because people need to understand that it's important. And if you don't understand that it's important, then you keep doing your thing and you figure it's going to blow over. So do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
That's where I am with that. I'm sorry.
No, I like that. I do. I often wonder, how does the transition of it getting better, like, is a tipping point going to happen, or are we going to, like, come up with suggestions where people could actually follow up on and improve it? And we're not going to see it, like, now, because we're still too close to things that have happened most recently, last month. Like, we keep getting reminded of things, so it's gonna have to, like, some time's gonna have to go by to see if anything's working anyway. But what do you think is a good time period to say, okay, we need to move on to the next thing because this obviously didn't work? Because remember, technology is so fast. So when you put something in place, people want instant results. But if you don't let it, get out the bugs or whatever and figure it out, how do you know it's not working or it's going to work?
I think that's the beauty of science. In my position, we have an evaluator. She's absolutely amazing. And what she does is she looks at the baseline, which many people will look at, like, where are we right now? And then set up an evaluation plan in order to be able to look at the trends as we move along. You could look at the trends of your problem people. You could look at the trends of the entire, I'm just speaking of police departments, the progress of the department versus the departments in the general area where they are and nationally. And evaluators look at trends and they're able to project forward, and it's not always correct, but they project forward. Okay, if we want to see this based on what's happened over this last year, if we want to see a continued drop of this percentage, it's probably going to take this long, and they continue to monitor. And I feel like if you get to a point where it's stagnated, in the beginning, it's not going to be a big change, and that's understandable. But if you see that it's kind of plateaued, then you may want to take other steps. Multidisciplinary and multi-component interventions are always better than one step. And so what I mean by that is, I can't just say, okay, we're going to do trainings for these cops. It has to be other things that are going on around that are also assisting them. Like, you have the training that they have to do. You have a licensing that they have to have. There have to be multiple things going on. Maybe they have certain things throughout the year in which they need to look at certain files and make determinations of what the best option would have been in order to handle a certain case or what have you, and then be revealed to them if the person was black, if the person was white, and how things were different. I think that it takes multiple things in order to unteach and reteach.
Oh, I get it. So who's supposed to come up with, what type of team is supposed to come up with the parameters of any of these things to say, okay, this is, and to hold on to that along, what's the product supposed to look like? That's what I feel like determines what you're going to cover.
I think the path, the ultimate goal is to not see a disparity in certain punishments people get versus others for the same type of violation, or even a lesser violation, depending on severity. I would look at it as, you need an evaluator, obviously, to look at the numbers. You would need someone that's educated in, I think, the historical context of policing with race over time. I think you would need to have somebody there who is over curriculum and understands how to teach different levels, cognitive learning levels of different people, because not everybody learns the same way. I think you need someone that is educated in equity, diversity, and inclusion, so that we're aware that the right components are in these trainings. And there have to be other people, statisticians, things of that nature that are in there. But I think those are the main components. Somebody that understands how to evaluate the change, somebody who understands where we've been, somebody who understands where we need to be, and somebody who understands how to put all of those lessons into a training so people understand this is where your mindset is versus where we're looking for it to go. And also a system, a policy set in place for people who may show more of discrimination in their actions against certain people based on their perceived, intention or motives of these people based on their race. So it's a number of people, but I think that team, there has to be people who are thinking about this stuff. But why are we not seeing it is my question. Maybe we're at that part where they put it into place and we just haven't seen the change yet. But I feel like it's necessary, and we need to stop saying that, well, how are we going to do this? Is so much. We can't completely revamp. We can't just take and people defund the police. Now, I do believe in not defunding to the sense of you're taking away all money and we don't have police. I do believe in redistributing some of the funds that go to police, making them little baby military, and instead putting it in places where you have people who are better suited for some of these calls than a police officer to take on those roles. That's what I believe for that. But I think that that's one of the steps. Like I was telling my cousin, you find one thing. They're saying that cop shouldn't have been there. That person was in a mental crisis. Okay, so why don't we take some of the funds? Because these police officers, they don't want to deal with mentally ill people either, because they don't know what they're doing. They scared. They scared at traffic stops. So I don't want to send them over somewhere where somebody's swinging a knife because they're stressed out. And so I think that, take some of the funds that are giving you guys all this idea that you are a part of SWAT, and give it to people who are more adequately trained to deal with those situations. We call police in and put them on a lot of situations as if they are the all for, good for everything type of thing. They're not a Swiss Army knife.
They are not.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think that is my biggest thing. It just burns me up.
I was thinking, when I think of movies on the future, on how it changed and it doesn't look the same, maybe everything just needs to be redone. The educational system, period. Like
the Constitution. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really do. Why can't we improve it?
I agree.
And I don't understand why any American wouldn't want to improve it unless they really think nothing's wrong with it. But everything, it offends everybody except rich white men, maybe. And yeah. What's so crazy is that it's tricked a certain part of the country to believe that it's loyalty to pledge allegiance to people who are making money off of your labor.
But what I think is that the Constitution was originally written by rebels. They were people who were trying to separate themselves. Yeah. Separate themselves and establish themselves. We're an established country at this point, and we 200 and something years in. So I think that it's safe for us to say that the ideas and the needs and the things that they felt they needed to establish so everybody understood, all that stuff is established. We good. If anybody who swear up and down they want this Constitution, go read it. And if you can sit there and read it in one sitting and be like, all right, bet I know exactly what they're talking about, then I'll shut up. However, the majority of the United States cannot read the Constitution and understand what in the world they're talking about.
I'm going to go with less than 4%.
Okay. And so what I'm thinking is you could take the skeleton of the Constitution and what the intention behind it as far as liberty and pursuit of happiness and all that other stuff, you could take all of that. But, you know, the whole thing about 3/5 of whoever and voting for this particular person and all of the things that do not, it's just like we were talking about the 1931 abortion ban out of Michigan. That don't even apply to, that was 100 years ago. That doesn't apply to how we live today, who women are in society. Like, that document was written when only white men with money had rights and only their concerns, needs, or values were reflected. And so the country looks so different now than it did 250 years ago. So probably at this point, everybody, we should take the skeleton of the things that everybody feels is just the most important threads of the Constitution and keep that. And the stuff that doesn't reflect who America is now, we need to start reforming it. Like, I'm not saying abandon the entire Constitution, but there's a lot of stuff in there that if I asked you on the street if you thought it was important, you would tell me no.
Period.
So,
you know,
one by one.
You know, I and I hope nobody takes any of this in the wrong way. Like, no, you know, it's always going to be somebody to say get out and whatever. But I guess ultimately, like, we're not, like, we can't possibly think that the founding fathers got it all right on the first try. You know what I'm saying? We're so much better than that. We've evolved into better humans, and we're like supposed to be this melting pot, but we know that there's a divide. But at the end of the day, even if there is a divide, we can ultimately come up with a better constitution where all of us can benefit from it and understand it a lot more. Just like, I mean, it's even like today, if we did the Constitution over today and we adjust it 200 years from now, they should be readjusting it again.
I agree.
You know, you should be reevaluating for the people. You know, I'm not saying it should be getting better.
I agree. It's just like there was the, you know, what is the 4th of July to me? There was the speech by Frederick Douglass where he was like, they asked him to come and do a speech for 4th of July. And he was like, why? What? Are y'all like, are y'all trying to be disrespectful? Like, what is the 4th of July to me? What is the 4th of July to a slave? Right. And so at one point he was writing somewhere, I don't know if it was in that speech or something else I was reading, he was talking and he said, I don't deny that there's beauty in the Constitution. The forefathers had good intentions, even if their intentions weren't for everyone. They did have an intention to be good to their people. For sure. And so he saw the wisdom and the value in how the founding fathers had intended to serve their people with that Constitution.
And they had no intentions of us becoming
we weren't a part of those people.
Correct.
Yeah, we weren't a part of that group. But this is also the idea behind when the doctor looks at the file and they don't see the color. So then they're able to choose the best quality care for that person because they're thinking with all of their brain, not with their prejudices included, intact. So I think that writing for those men to write that Constitution, thinking about those they love the most, us, our people who we want, not us as in me, but I'm saying them speaking. They wrote the best document that they could possibly write for the love of the people they were trying to protect and serve. And so I'm saying they did not write it for America in 2022.
They did not.
And America in 2022 looks very, very different. Just like women's rights and status changed since 1931 in Michigan, all of us, all of our rights, all of our liberties and expectations and status in society has changed since 1776. And so I think that we should probably, us being the one of the youngest countries, I guess, of the world, we probably should have the ability to
change it to make it better.
Be those rebels, be those, people who will be like, we've been rebels, we've been changing, we've been doing, let's keep the party going and continue to
lead the way.
Yeah, lead the way. Exactly.
Yeah, like we couldn't have possibly thought that we got it right in 1700s.
Well, they did, but I don't think they saw this America. I think they saw that same America. That
same America, correct. Yeah. And even in the 1900s, it wasn't. So the idea, this is my thing. I remember I used to be, it's pride and ego, and I think United States is built off of that. Mm-hmm. But when I removed my pride and ego is when I realized I could change my mind because I had more information. Mm-hmm. So as America, as an American, I feel that it's only right to reevaluate and say, hey, do we still have these beliefs as a country? And it's not like we're getting rid of it. We're just going to say we have a better version of our Constitution that represents our country. Mm-hmm. And we vote on it. So the idea that we can't change or do anything to the original Constitution just shows that we don't care about the people in this country for real.
Yeah, I agree. We care about the people that were in the country 250 years ago.
Correct.
And we're fighting for them to have their rights and wants reflected. I'm telling you, read it. If you could read it and tell me what it means. I mean, Day in her 8th grade social studies class, they had to go through and interpret pieces of the Constitution. And when you want to talk about a mad parent at home... because I can help you with a quadratic equation, but that mess right there made me mad. And so I think that it would be nice for the document that is supposed to be, representative of our country to be a living document that allows for an evolution along with its people.
And look, at the end of the day, that's when the country stole it from other Native Americans.
We ain't even gonna talk about that part.
So at some point, we got to show how the United States got it together. We figured it out. It was like, in order to lead the world, we have to treat our people better.
Yeah, and I think that's a whole nother can of worms when we talk about the actual people who inhabited these lands prior to.
Yes.
And still inhabit these lands. I'm not going to act like they're gone. They're not gone. And their presence is being felt more and more every day, which I appreciate. Even in meetings, like people start meetings now with saying, I want to give honor and respect to the lands, whoever inhabited the land where they are. They even gave me a website. We'll put it on there too. It's a website that you can go on and put in your zip code, and it'll tell you what Native Americans actually inhabited that land prior to colonization. So you can respect what lands you're standing on and who actually inhabited them prior to. So I'm all for that as well.
For sure. That was a productive conversation.
Hey, I might have talked too much, and I'm sorry if y'all had to hear my voice a little bit too much, but man, I said one thing to this man and we went down. We was fighting. We weren't fighting. But I was like, are you what? When he talked about the temperament, I was like, what?
I just want you guys to know the only reason why she and I disagree on anything is because I can't articulate effectively. So
he tries, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying. I promise. Once she figures it out, she'll be like, oh, okay.
Hey, yeah. Still ready to fight.
Anybody you want to give a shout out before we get out of here?
Dr. Kamara Phyllis Jones for giving us a jumping point to have this discussion. And can I just add that I'm gonna give y'all the 4 levels of racism just so we can start being clear, because Dallas be telling me I'm racist and I told him I can't be. But anyway, so before we leave, there's internalized racism, personally mediated, institutional, and structural. So internalized is when you're accepting negative messages on the abilities and worth of the stigmatized race and not believing and supporting others from the same race or ethnicity. So it kind of shows up as, self-devaluation, where you might hopelessness, helplessness, and embracing the culture of whiteness. But then there's personally mediated racism. And this is what I think that most of us are operating on day to day. Is it's between prejudice and discrimination. And sometimes people don't know the difference between them. So with prejudice, it's your assumptions about the motives, intentions of others and their abilities based on their race. So you're prejudiced if you think that their abilities are limited. You have assumptions about them based on their race. That's your prejudice. Discrimination is your actions toward that person based on that prejudice. So you're discriminating against me if something you do is based off of what you assume about me. Like clutching your purse. You know what I'm saying? You may think that I'm gonna steal from you. That's your prejudice because you think that's who my people are. But when you clutch your purse or you have those microaggressions, those certain things that you say to people, suspicion or lack of suspect or scapegoating people, that's you acting out that prejudice. And prejudice could be intentional or unintentional, but your discrimination is your action. So then there's institutional, and institutional is like in housing and education when you're denying or allowing people advantages or disadvantages based on access to goods and services and opportunities within an organization. So that's like quality education, housing, healthcare, employment, even a clean environment. Like you will clean up these parks because they're in a certain area, but these other ones, you just let them go by the wayside. Even sharing information with people. Certain people understanding how to navigate the health system better because of who they are versus not really having the assistance based on who you might be. And I've seen that happen before. I could talk about that later. And then there's structural, where it's the overall racial bias across all entities and within society. So that shows up as far as the wealth gap, the power gap, the opportunity gap, and racial inequities. And so I wanted to put that out there so then Dallas could understand that I might be practicing personally mediated racism based on prejudice and discrimination. I don't discriminate against people. Maybe I do, but I do have prejudices. Mine is not so much to say that people are not, they're dumb or they're incapable, they're not smart, they can't do this, they can't do that. My prejudices are based on how safe I feel. So when I look at certain groups, I'm like I said, when somebody rides around and they have a flag flying behind their truck or their motorcycle, my prejudice is that I'm assuming that they'll
do something to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that came from the past presidential era, because I almost see people flying these flags as synonymous with flying the Trump flags. And if I see people with stickers like the Blue Lives Matter flag and stuff like that, it makes me feel like my life may not be valued by that person as much. And so I need to be mindful.
On alert.
Yeah. Yes.
Head on the swivel.
And so my discrimination is that I avoid them. That's my action based on my assumption or my prejudice.
Unless they have fine
what?
Animals.
You're so stupid. Look, they walk around with a poodle, then I feel differently.
Look, we went to go through different counties in Michigan to search, and you will see Trump flags. I'm like, I guess you wasn't too scared about these guys.
No, we went to go get one of our dogs, and I didn't know where we were going, really.
Shoot, anywhere out of a major city, you know where you're going.
So we were driving, and the more I saw Trump flags, I'm like, okay, first of all, he been out of office for a while, but they be tried and true. They be real with it. It makes me nervous.
Like,
so
you don't want to get a flag.
Let's keep going.
Yes.
Keep going. Let's get out of this area, please. And so those are the prejudices that I practice because I'm afraid of people. Just because that group, what they support, makes me feel like my life might not be as valued. And so I just need to I need to go away. Like, I don't run up on these people or yell at them or tell them they better get out of my area or whatever. I don't do that. I turn and go in a different direction. And so, yeah, I practice that. But I told him, when he talks about, I said, as far as racism, what I've understood is I can't limit people's ability to progress in life. Like, I can't do that. And even with like that, my prejudice is based on the flag. If I just meet white people on the street, it doesn't matter if they look like a biker or they look like a little old lady walking a poodle. I always talk to people and I'm polite and I'll interact with them. But if I see certain triggers, it makes me scared. So even in learning about these different forms of racism, whether it's you on yourself, you toward people day to day, or institutional or structural, it helped me to understand where I have power to impact that level of prejudice and things of that nature on my own level. And I think other people should know too. But I'm going to give a long story long. I'm going to give a shout out to Dr. Kamara Phyllis Jones.
No doubt. I've learned so much, for real. Just how you were able to break down an example for each of them. I was like, wow. Because, you know, I have my own prejudice also. I will say that I actively try not to. Mm-hmm. But if I can help somebody and I had to make a decision, I'm probably going to help somebody of color. But if there's nobody of color, I'll help the other. No, I'm just saying.
Like if it was like a whole bunch of people hurt, if you would go to the person of color to help them first.
Yes, because I feel like he may not have another opportunity to get some help. So
right, somebody else may come and
and they're gonna just look over him. So
yeah.
I try to make sure that I choose wisely because even people that look like us will go to somebody who looks up.
So see, you're acting out of fear that the disparity will be clear. Like somebody else will come and
I can't assume that people are going to be like me.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to think outside of whatever my environment tells me, just because I know that I could run into the percentage.
Yeah, it's not valuing somebody's life over another. It's understanding that someone else may value a life over another, and you got to fill the gap.
For sure, just like you know, the driving aspect. Like if I just drive what I'm supposed to drive, I don't compromise the rest of the road. You know, if you just play your role and you watch for other people, because other people will do whatever. So if it's something I can help, I'm going to play my role.
Okay.
But I really appreciate all that. And look, I'm telling you, she and I have some really good conversations off. You know, sometimes I wish that, you know, sometimes we could just like click something on and just, because we do really have these wonderful conversations. But shout out to everybody who's had some type of discrimination against you, because you have a lot more in common with each other than you would ever imagine. And those of you that have figured it out and you are still a great person, even though you can't stop what other people do, shout out to your courage and your bravery and you leading by example. I appreciate all of you guys who are trying to do the right thing. And when I say the right thing, that's where everybody will benefit. And I said everybody. So keep doing the right thing. Be great on purpose. Boom.